narcissism is everywhere.
Yeah,
So,
it's a buzzword, I think.
mm-hmm.
And I think the two main things people don't realize about narcissism is that number one, it's on a spectrum. So you have mild, moderate, severe, and clinical. Clinical meaning it has been diagnosed by a psychologist or a counselor, a psychologist, somebody who knows a lot about narcissism. But number two, there's about like 8 different forms of narcissism, and sometimes it can be very hard to decipher what type of narcissist this person is. So I deal a lot with domestic violence in my work, in my line of work, and narcissistic abuse is one of them. And a lot of women, I deal with predominantly women, women of South Asian background. Like I'm Indian, so a lot of my clients are Indian because they feel comfortable. And a lot of them will say to me, "Oh, my husband's a narcissist," and then I'm like, "Okay, wait a minute. Let's like we need to unpack this because sometimes we think it's narcissism, but it may not be. It's such a complex topic. Like, for example, just because somebody gaslights you, it doesn't mean they're a narcissist. Or just
Yeah.
because they're a narcissist does not mean they are going to gaslight. So yeah, there's plenty to learn about narcissism that I think more people need to have awareness of before they start labeling everybody as a narcissist.
Right. And I did not realize there's really that many levels of narcissism. And like I said, it can be a buzzword, and somebody go, "Oh, he's a narcissist. She's a narcissist." But sometimes, do those people who are labeling others really know what a narcissist is? Or is it just that they're labeling because they've heard that word and they're going, "Oh, I think, yeah, they're a narcissist."
I've noticed that a lot of the women who do label their partners as narcissists are actually going through coercive control. So they may not. So coercive control is a form of not narcissism, form of domestic violence, where
Hmm.
but it encompasses different forms of domestic violence, like the isolation and the emotional abuse and the financial abuse. It's a combination of it, but it's not physical. So sometimes coercive control is very hard to pick. But because it's such a confusing form of domestic violence, I find that women don't know what it is that they're going through because it's like something feels off, but I don't know what it is. Something doesn't feel right, but I don't know what it is. I think my husband's a narcissist, or I think my partner's a narcissist, but I'm not sure. So it starts from there because they're not sure. And then they probably Googled it and were like, okay, yes, the gaslighting, okay, or the emotional manipulation, or he keeps blaming me for everything. So that must mean that he's a narcissist. But when you dig deeper, it you don't have to be a narcissist to do those things. So it's yeah, I can talk about this for days. um, but but when they
Well,
start doubting their own reality and their perception of reality, then I would start to say that it probably is narcissistic abuse because that's what narcissists do is really they're trying to distort your memory, distort your version of events. When it gets deeper into that, I would be like, yes, I think you are facing that. But initially, it starts with of some form of abuse, of domestic violence,
mm.
and then the narcissism creeps seeps into that.
So here comes one of those possibly seemingly dumb questions or obvious type of things, and not to be chauvinistic, but I would, since we're talking mainly about helping women, does it sometimes get, or do women sometimes confuse their wanting to nurture, and then they wait too long, and then they maybe have that aha moment, but they've gone past that coercive control. They're into narcissism, or that partner is really controlling and stuff like that. Am I making sense with that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. Like, how much have they tolerated to then finally be
Hmm.
like, hold on, I think I'm going through so much. I've once again I've noticed it because I deal with a lot of South Asian. I'm predominantly talking about the South Asian community, but I think maybe people in general do this too. They would. They tolerate their window of tolerance is very high. And I think sometimes maybe that stems from trauma they've faced as a child or as an adolescent, trauma that they've faced with their parents or past relationships, and their level of tolerance because of the trauma, because they've already endured so much, is actually quite high. So
Mhm.
in these abusive relationships, some things that feel normal, like they've continued to tolerate things that feel normal or don't feel normal for a long time. And then after a while, they're like, I'm I don't feel good in this place anymore. Like something's not right. Like they come to that. This is not normal that I can't go out with my friends, or it's not normal that I can't spend my own money. It's not normal, but it happens a bit late because um, in my culture, for example, it's very patriarchal. So it's normal for you to rely on a man to look after finances, to look after all those things. But what subconsciously happens is that they take away the freedom and autonomy of you, of your finances. But it's so slowly done over time, it's gradual. Suddenly you don't have access to your money. Suddenly you can't use it. Suddenly you can't do these things. That, yeah, over time they realize, hold on, I think I think this is not right. Sometimes it's too late because they've got kids, they're so entrapped. They don't have access to money, access to anything, and the realization hits them late.
Yeah.
And then they might be thinking that they're dealing with narcissistic abuse, but it's layers. It's not just that. It's coercive control. It's emotion. It's financial control. It's immigration abuse. It's so many things, and then sexual abuse is also included into that because of manipulation. A lot of women feel like they have to have sex with their partners to not go through abuse. Like if I keep them satisfied, I won't be abused. So a lot of women go through that too, and yeah, it gets very deep, very traumatic, very complex for
Yeah.
women in these situations. It's like a hole they can't get out of sometimes.
Well, I'm also glad that you mentioned about culturally, it could be very different as well as far as that tolerance level goes, where we might
Yeah.
say in certain cultures on the Western side, that tolerance level, now this is just in general, might be much lower. In fact, it's so low that they're jumping the gun, so to speak. But on maybe Eastern Indian, Asian culture, and things like that, the tolerance level is so high that others will look and say, "Why didn't you realize this long ago?"
Yeah. Yeah, they do. I mean, I have to say, I was one of those people at the start when I started dealing with domestic violence. In my mind, I'm like, couldn't you see that? Like, the control was there from 10 years ago. You know, for them, it was just so normal. I think
Yeah.
that's passed down. I think it's something they saw with their parents, maybe. Maybe the father was like that with the mom, or something they've seen, or maybe they feel that to be normal. And I think that's one of the reasons why abuse continues is it was already normalized as a child, so you don't know what's right, what's wrong, and what you're used to. So
Hmm.
I do think that's one of the factors contributing to why people stay and they can't recognize it.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure there are some, you know, coping mechanisms or strategies for protecting yourself, but are there coping mechanisms that are, I'll just use the word, dangerous to use? And then are there coping mechanisms or strategies that are better to use to protect yourself in these situations?
You mean to do with narcissistic abuse?
Narcissism, yes, yes. Narcissism, the domestic violence, and things like that. Uh, Coping
Ooh.
strategies meaning don't. The dangerous one is don't grab that bottle of alcohol and cope and
Yes, don't drink.
drown yourself away.
Definitely.
Or, like you said, some women will use their body to cope, and I'm going to say this is partially a coping mechanism because, like you said, they don't want to deal with the consequences of whatever that trauma or violence is, even though I think when they put themselves into the position where they're going to use, satisfying their partner, the man, as a way to alleviate whatever pain that they might be going through, because then I think they're lowering themselves and then they're going to become more depressed themselves. Uh, so, I mean, what are some of the good strategies for coping?
Normally, when you're going through narcissistic abuse, it's very important not to fight back, not to.
Mm.
You're having the argument. Don't try to prove your point because these people don't want to hear it. They're not there to reason with you or have logic in your arguments. It's better to. I say this to anyone who's going through even domestic violence, so domestic violence and narcissistic abuse. Always journal what's going on if it's possible, if
Mm.
it's safe to do so. Journal it, email it to yourself, text it to yourself, wherever it's safe, so it's like the abuser can't find it, and journal all the events that are happening, all the abuse that's happening, this date, this time, who, what, when, where, how, why. You're journaling that. In events where you're facing narcissistic abuse and you know that the person is trying to make you feel like you're crazy, they're trying to distort your reality, um, and it usually will happen after an argument, something where they're trying to say this never happened, I never said that, I didn't do this. So when you know that you're going to face that and it's something you always face, I would say once again you need to journal these things so that you can remember what actually happened and you don't in your mind feel like you are going crazy because you've journaled it, you knew what happened at the time. You don't need to question it, you don't need to feel like you're crazy. It's also evidence that you can use because you can take that to the police station as well.
Is there a generalization that we could do for self protecting, whether it's narcissistic abuse and for domestic violence? Or are they really different when it comes to strategies for coping and for self protecting?
With
Because I think one of them, like you said, with narcissism, is it's don't fight with them, don't argue to try to be right because you're never going to be right with them.
Yeah, that definitely is one of them. Um, with narcissism, sometimes it's dependent upon the type of narcissist that they are, because there's 8 different types. So it's like once you
Hmm.
figure out what that type of narcissist they are, then you can figure out how to cope with that form. Um, but in general, if I'm talking in general, narcissism and domestic violence, I would say, first of all, abusers and narcissists, they test and push your limits. That's what they thrive off doing.
Mm.
So you you would have to be clear and direct. Don't over explain or try and justify your boundaries, whatever they were. Don't You can repeat your boundary if it's challenged, but for example, you can just say, I'm not willing to have this conversation with you if you keep raising your voice. And that's it. You don't need to over explain, it's self explanatory. I'm not going to respond to you until you talk to me with respect. Not happening. Just you shut that down. Sometimes, especially narcissists, they love attention, ego, praise. So you don't want to do that. You just want to be neutral. You don't need to praise them, give them attention all the time. Don't react when they are provoking you because that's how they get attention. That they thrive off that. So you want to stay neutral, especially when they're fishing for attention. I would say also limit personal disclosure. So don't tell them too much about yourself or your friends or your family. I mean, you should be able to if it's your partner, but when it's people like this and you already know, don't tell them private things or things that they can use against you. Don't share your vulnerabilities with them because
Ah.
they will always throw that back at you. You don't want that. So you keep important things, plans, conversations, emotions, you keep that private. It's You can choose other people to confide in instead of a person who is abusing you. Also, giving yourself like a reality check in ways of journaling. You journal
Hmm.
everything that happens to you, especially when you're in an abusive relationship. This is domestic violence as well. You journal who, what, when, where, how, why, when did the argument start, what date, what time, what was it over, who did what, because number one, you can use it as evidence, as proof. Number two, especially with narcissists who enjoy trying to distort your memory, when you keep journals of things that happen, you yourself have recounted that. So you can go back and be like, actually, no, like this is what happened. And it's like you're reaffirming to yourself that you actually do remember what has happened. You're not losing your marbles, you're not going crazy. You're reminding yourself that what you went through, your feelings, and everything that happened did in fact happen. So, yeah, gaslighting is often linked to abusive dynamics and narcissism. So, more narcissism than domestic violence related. So, that's where journaling really, really helps. Or talk to people who are professionals, talk to your friends, your family instead. They will give you like a reality check, they'll keep you grounded. You're not going to feel like you're crazy talking to them. I would also say don't try and win with a narcissist because it probably won't happen. They enjoy getting the last word. So, sometimes it's better to walk away. Even in general, like even if you're going through emotional and psychological abuse in a domestic violence situation rather than narcissistic abuse, it's like you'd rather just walk away. You don't necessarily have to keep proving your point because sometimes they purposely miss the point. They don't want to get the point. So it's not going to benefit you to try and do that. And maybe accept that they're probably just not going to accept or acknowledge your perspective. And then also, after all that, might be hard to do, but focus on self-regulation. So if you can, exercise, breath work, meditation, journaling, spending time with safe people if you can, possibly planning an escape because you can't be in these situations for life. Like we're dealing with narcissistic partners or domestic violence. I mean, you have to consider like how long are you going to stay? Is it worth it? Is this what your life is for? Like going through this level of abuse, like is this what you were here for? Surely not. So it's also considering
Yeah.
your options because it's not.
What's my exit plan?
Yeah, what is your exit plan? Whose place can you go and stay at? Who can protect you? Do you need to move, interstate? How are you going to protect yourself? Those are things that you really have to think about. I've noticed in my line of work, a lot of the women I deal with are trying to find ways to cope with the abuse rather than leave. So they'll ask me, "Oh, but how do I stay in this relationship with a man like this?" And I'm like, "Why do you feel like you need to stay? Like this is not love. Why?"
Yeah, and that was one of the questions. One of the things we talked about earlier is, women are the
Yeah,
nurturer, and I think a lot of women, doesn't matter what nationality or where they're from, women tend to nurture, and it's I can fix, or I'm going to fix, or they. Again, I'm not an expert, but it seems like the women feel that it's their purpose or their need to help fix that person.
yeah. They spend time trying to fix it. And the thing is, when you're dealing with people who have the narcissistic tendencies, they're not going to go to therapy. Narcissists,
Yeah.
as much as we throw the word around, and there's so many different forms, and like I said, it's on a spectrum. A narcissist has to have some level of self-awareness for them to think, oh, I might need help and I need to go get help. Because with narcissism, you already have that sense of superiority and that ego and that I'm never wrong. So if you go to therapy, you're almost admitting that you're wrong and that you need help. But in general, narcissists don't, they're not going to admit those things that I have an issue and I'm wrong and whatever. Then it's never to do with them. It'll always be to do with other people. So that's the reason why narcissists don't get help. So most of the time, narcissism goes undiagnosed, and it's people around them, like us, who are not narcissists, who'll sit there and like try and diagnose it. But we can to an extent, but at the end of the day, it's really when they go get that therapy and that help that they can actually be diagnosed. But like I said, the problem is that it's very rare that a narcissist will do that. So
Yeah.
You can't fix them. You can't change them. That's not going to happen if they don't, for any reason. Like, the world must be ending if a narcissist goes to therapy, honestly, and thinks that they're a narcissist.
Right.
Like, that's how I feel about it.
But you know what they're dreaming, that they are the best thing in the world and that they know everything.
That's what they're doing. So
Sh-
that's why they just won't get them to get help. Like, no, that's not happening.
yeah. Shalina, I want to ask you a little bit more about the journaling, because I think with that journaling, it seems like it's also therapeutic for the person that's writing it down. Not only, like you said, it can use it as a record of events that happen if something does happen and you need the record to remind you. But aside from um, being therapeutic, it also seems like that if you write things down and you're in this situation, when you go back to read it, you could read it as a third person, an outside person, and then you begin to question, well, why did that person do that? That was me. I know that I shouldn't be doing this. That person should get out, or whatever it might be. Does journaling kind of help with that?
It can. I feel like journaling alone doesn't help you until you're in a therapeutic session where you take your journal to a therapist, counselor, psychologist
Mm.
who can help you uh, decode. Journaling is the first step. If people journal, that's great. It's an emotional release. You're getting your thoughts out of your mind onto paper. It can give you self awareness, but then you need to then have the emotional aware, the IQ to sit there and analyze everything that you've written. But sometimes people just write and they go because it's like, okay, I got it out of my head, I released it. All right, shut the book, I'm done. So it's really how you use journaling, because that's an actual tool for processing your trauma, for giving you greater awareness. Um, but I
Mm.
think it, I think personally, I think it's something you should take to a trusted therapist who can help you. Why did you write this, or when did this happen, and gives you the prompts to analyze what you have written. It's not
Hmm.
helpful just on its own. And then when you get to that level of IQ, EQ rather, emotional intelligence, EI, whatever you call it, that's when you can then, like you said, sit there and read it yourself in third person and then be like, okay, this is, the lens, like a helicopter lens. You're from the top. You're
Yeah.
looking, like, zooming into certain parts of it. But yes, it does. It can help reduce anxiety and stress. It can help with problem solving as well. But like I said, I personally don't think it's something you should just write and go. I think you should do more with it.
All right. So here is a seemingly easy enough answer to, or question to answer, but a difficult one. When is it enough? And how do we know when enough is enough and it's time to leave?
Oh,
Whether it be from a narcissism or some sort of domestic abuse of violence. Because again, we talked about cultural differences. Some have, you take one step across the line, that's plenty, I'm out of here. The others, the line is a never um, ending line. It keeps moving. So when is it enough, and how do we know?
I would say that it's enough when you live in fear and panic and hypervigilance all the time. When you feel like your safety is at risk, when you're working on eggshells all the time, when you feel intimidated, when you feel like you've lost your sense of identity, when you feel like you don't know who you are anymore, when you see, when
Mm.
your partner starts controlling you, who you see, where you go, what you do, all those things are reasons, are when it gets enough, when you feel like you're not yourself anymore, you don't know who you are, you're questioning everything around you. Those are reasons to start thinking. When your children are affected, a lot of women who I speak to, they know their children are witnessing the parents are fighting, arguing, and they're like, it's affecting my child, but I don't know what to do, and but he's a good father. And it's like, is he really? If if he's abusing the mother. I don't know. I don't think so. So it's when you know when it's enough. But sometimes it is enough, yet people just don't have the courage to leave. Like they know they have to, and they're just like, I don't know what to do. Or money. I mean, when you're financially controlled, well, that's another reason why people are going to stay. But yes, like I said, enough is when you are just nothing makes sense anymore. You're just not happy. You can't
Yeah.
sleep. You feel it in your body. Trauma gets stored in your body. You feel it in your body. You just, yeah, every day living in fear. It's when apologies never lead to change and the person just keeps apologizing but doing the same thing over and over. When you're isolated all the time. When your body's telling you something's wrong. When you know deep down it's unhealthy. All of these things, you have to go.
Yeah. For me, my wish, and all of this is you use the one example of, well, I'm going to stay here because we have children and he's a good father. But we have to really realize that there's a lot of things are learned behavior. So is, like you said, question, is he or is she really a good role model?
Yeah,
The answer is maybe not.
yeah.
So
It's true. It's maybe not. I think sometimes people just want to sweep the pain and the trauma under the carpet, and they don't want to acknowledge what's really going on and what's there. So they feel like if I just pretend this doesn't exist, if I just go along with it, if I just learn to tolerate, then everything's going to go away, no matter what. And if I just,
yeah,
it's just not there, out of sight, out of mind. If I just become a doormat and do everything that I'm told, everything's going to be fine. And it's like, that's not the answer to your problem. Being a doormat is not the answer to your problem. Tolerating is not the answer to your problem. It means that there is a problem and you just don't know how to get out of it. The other thing I know, a reason
yeah.
why people in general don't leave, lack of knowledge of the law, especially when they've migrated from another country. So, for example, the women I deal with moved here from India. The law in India is very different. Not sure what. I'm not from India. I don't exactly know all the laws there. But in Australia, it's very different. Here, like one person can apply for a divorce. You don't need your partner's approval to get a divorce. They don't know even things like that. Or if there's immigration abuse present, they don't have their permanent residency to live here.
I've been thinking about this midway through our conversation and trying to find out a way. How am I going to ask this without it sounding bad? And as you kind of mentioned, well, the laws are different there in Australia compared to here in the US. You primarily deal with East Indian women. This world is gotten much, much smaller, meaning that we have people in the Western culture who, and I'm going to say it, who may seek out women in other cultures who might be subservient. Is that
Submissive.
submissive too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. On
Um,
purpose, because that's the normality.
exactly. They don't, it's always a yes, yes, yes to their spouse, to their husband.
Yeah.
How can the women from other countries coming to a different country help themselves? Is it good for them to seek out groups of other women that are from their culture, or what can they do to really feel more comfortable?
Yes. Well, Facebook is a great tool for that because when you search on Facebook for like whichever nationality you are, and like say Indian, right? So Indian women's group, you can find that, and that's where people get help. A lot of the women who find me have been on these Indian women's groups that I'm on, and I'm able to connect with them, then get them the help. So that I don't know about in your country, but here we've got women's legal services, women's support, women's like shelter, not shelters, women's centers.
Mhm.
So I think that if there is such thing in whichever country you live in, like a women's center. There's like an Indian women's center here. So once again, is there some sort of women's refuge center, legal center, Facebook page, community WhatsApp groups? There's a lot of I'm in a lot of Indian WhatsApp groups for Indian women in Australia, in Sydney. I'm in Sydney. So there is ways you can find. And once you, if you have the courage to talk about what you're going through, people will help you and they'll guide you. However, that being said, I have noticed some very bad advice being given to people.
I bet you have. Oh, that's the thing that a lot of these groups that you go into, that people may go into, and there are groups here in the States, and I'm just going to say that, but I can't really list them for legal reasons, where I don't want to get in trouble saying, oh, Chuck and his podcast said go here. So I'm not going to, but that there are here in the States as well. But yeah, that's the thing with these groups is you're going into a group where they are people like you, not you, Shalina, but non-experts. They're just sharing their stories. So you can't take it as the gospel, so to speak, but you
Yeah.
can listen to it and have conversations, and you can relate to the people and realize that you're not the only one and that you can help each other. Is that
Yeah.
a good way of kind of getting around that?
Well, like I've noticed on a lot of these Indian women's groups that I'm in, a woman will talk about something that has happened with her and her husband. Oh, we fight, this, that, I'm going through abuse. And I've seen some women comment on it being like, oh, this is just normal. This happens all the time. Like, just pretend it doesn't happen and just live your life, just be happy, do your own thing. And I'm like, hold on. She just said she's going through abuse. Like, are you people serious right now? And yeah, so I see a lot of bad advice being like of tolerance. Just tolerate. The advice is tolerate. And that's where I'm like, no, don't tolerate this. It's not normal. That's when I come in and I'm like, okay, I need to say something here. I can't keep my mouth shut. People are giving bad advice. I need to tell them this is not normal. And then I always tell them to connect with me so then I can like help them, and then I pass them, I give them numbers of like lawyers and people who can actually help them and give them proper advice on what to do in their lives, in their situation. And that's what people should be doing. Like, don't tell people to tolerate disrespect of any kind.
Yeah.
This is across, it's not even gender related right now. Just in general, don't tolerate that. And if you're going through abuse, somebody who is, actually be helpful and give them numbers of maybe places and people they can contact. Like, don't sit there and just be like, oh, just tolerate. Like, that's ridiculous.
You're strong. You can deal with it. It's
Yeah,
okay. No, it's not okay.
no. Oh man. So yes, it's the good and the bad. But to going back to your question, yes, there are a lot of community groups for different nationalities, and you can seek that out on social media. It's a great tool. Social media is a great tool for connecting people, 100%. And Google search might help you as well. Whatever
Mhm.
nationality, community groups, centers. There's always something available to help you, so where you don't feel like you're alone and you can get information.
Yeah. Well, Shalina, is there one or two things that women can do right now to help themselves in general, as far as maybe don't put yourself or don't get into this situation? I had to correct myself because I don't want to say don't put yourself because no, that's not the right way of saying it. So, what can they do to help protect themselves? Uh,
Ooh.
just in general about abuse, narcissistic abuse, all of that, because so much of it is happening. And, here in the States, I'm going to say that we are at a point in period in this time where everything is so divisive, if that's a right word to use, but it
Mm.
divides even the couples. But then they're together, but they argue and fight,
Mm.
and then there's abuse.
Yeah, I would say when you first get into a relationship with somebody, you really have to set and maintain clear boundaries right from the start. Those boundaries, what is acceptable, what's not. You know, in my personal opinion, I would say don't ever have joint bank accounts with somebody, because once you start doing that, you will never have your financial autonomy. Always be financially independent. This will save you from being stuck when you're trying to leave an abusive or a tricky situation. You need to stay at a motel overnight. You need to fly out of the state. Always maintain your financial independence. And if you feel like, and if your partner starts trying to control you financially, that is a red flag. You That should not be happening. Your money is your money. So I would say, and sit down and analyze what is going on in your situation. If you know in your gut something's not right, start taking action now. So that involves calling lawyers, talking about your situation, what's going on, calling up accountants, like figuring out all your finances, all your legalities, planning your escape. Keep your friends and family in the loop, who you are, who you can trust. Start by doing all those things. Build a safe network of people. So a
Yeah.
therapist, a counselor, because they will also have notes and write and have records. Support services and hotlines. Family or friends you can speak with openly. Build a support network. Be financially independent. Start planning your escape. Set boundaries would be. I know you said two pieces of advice, but I just went on a tangent and thought of four. Those would be my pieces of advice at the moment. And also journal, like I was saying earlier, only because that will keep you grounded and feeling sane. So that was five things, but yeah, whatever works. Um,
Exactly. Whatever works. And five is better than the two that you listed out. So that's great.
yeah,
You know what? I don't want to speak for you, but I will speak and say that we are not saying when you get into a relationship to immediately plan that escape right this second and then have escape to get out, right? Because I
yeah,
think if we do that, we tend to think that it's not going to last. But just make
yeah,
sure that you have that in your mind about keeping yourself safe. And I
yeah,
do like the point that you made about having like separate accounts. And when I say that with the money, is at least for me, if I was to get in the situation, I would like to be able to have a joint account where money's put in together. That's joint. But I would suggest a woman have. My suggestion is don't have a joint credit card account, a joint bank account, but have separate bank accounts too. But the reason I say about the credit card, if it's a joint, you are responsible. Both of you are going to be responsible. So, you know,
yeah.
that's my 2 cents worth about money.
Yeah, no, it's true. Um, keep them separate so that it's accessible. Because I've noticed, even with joint accounts, I've noticed a lot of women have they had joint accounts and the men wiped the account out,
Yep.
and that's what you don't want. You don't want, regardless of what gender right now, you don't want your partner or soon to be ex-partner to wipe your account out. This is why I always say, as soon as there's an argument, that can happen. The first thing they're going to go to is
Oh
the
yeah.
money, right? Like a,
Yes.
revenge or freedom, power. So that's the reason why you don't have joint accounts. Keep them separate and always have a plan B at the back of your mind of where you can go and what you can do. And don't provoke your partner if there is an argument, because if you provoke, you might be putting your life at risk. So try and be calm and neutral. It's not easy, I know. However, to save your own self, sometimes you just have to be calm and neutral and don't fight back. It may not work in your best interest to do that.
Can I say this and ask you about this with the money thing? I like money. Money, everybody does. And like I said, when it comes to an argument, that's one of the first things they grab for is I'm going to take what's mine. I'm going to take all
Yeah,
that out and punish the other person. Um, this may be wrong or sounds wrong, is I'd say in that relationship, treat that money or that bank account as a business. And I would say that when you're together and if you're going to have that joint account, honey, I'm going to put 20% in, you put 20%. That's our joint account. The rest is outside because then you're only investing a little bit of that money and that's all you're going to lose. And that joint account is there for the bills or whatever it might be. The reason I say this is if you keep totally separate and you say 50%, 50%, then that kind of makes it an argument too. I put in more, or no, you didn't. You put, so we want to try to not, am I'm thinking too much business on this. But
we
bottom
went
line
for
is
that story.
protect yourself.
No, I see what you're saying. I guess I think because of my experience and because I also like my mum and dad went through financial, like my mum went through financial abuse at the hands of my dad. Um, my personal opinion has always been just don't have joint bank accounts. I personally,
Same.
that's just for me, it's a big no no. Only because I think that when it comes to paying bills and whatever it may be that you need a joint account for, I feel like well, you can already pay it from your own. Like you can pay for bills from your own account. But if you're, but people who are transactional or people who want to keep things equal or fair or whatever you say, then yes, it might work for them to have joint accounts to pay for things. I guess everybody's arrangement is different. But if
Yeah.
in your gut you feel like something's not right and you're hesitating to have a joint account, listen to your gut because it is your instinct. You know, when you got that your third, what is it called? Your sixth sense. Uh it is that. It's your gut, it's your sixth sense. You should always go with what you're actually feeling. Don't hide from your subconscious emotions and feelings because that's usually trying to tell you something. So if it
Yeah.
doesn't feel right, don't
Don't
do it.
don't be afraid to bring these things up and to be who you are, because your partner should be able to understand and accept it. Even if you say, honey, there seems to be like $1 missing from the account and we're $1 off.
What happened to that
But
dollar?
again, yeah. But again, it's in the best of the worlds of relationships, we should be able to talk about these things and bring them up without one or the other becoming angry and then becoming abusive about it. And
That's
again,
right.
we were talking about narcissism, we're talking about abuse, whether it be physical or mental abuse. It's all abuse.
Yeah,
And women and men should not tolerate or allow themselves to be in this, and they should do what they can to protect themselves.
absolutely. Always, you have to protect yourself to save yourself.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter what gender you are.
yeah. Um, Again, this has been fantastic. It's kind of been an eye opener. Well,
I'm
yeah,
glad.
eye opening. Yes, a lot of things to learn. Again, like Shalina was saying, there are different stages of narcissism, and we really didn't get into the 8 stages, and perhaps we'll have her back to talk about that and be more specific about narcissism and narcissistic abuse, because
Yes,
I think that's becoming more prevalent. I'm hearing that word again, and like you said, it can be a buzzword, but it is that word that's coming back.
yes, yes. As long as people are aware of the forms and the fact that it's, mild, moderate, severe, or clinical, that start doing your research on that because we all carry some forms of narcissism, but sometimes it's very mild. Everybody can have narcissistic traits. It's not a bad
Yeah,
thing as long as you are self-aware. The problem with those who are clinically, NPD, have the narcissistic personality disorder, they don't have that. They're happy in their world. It benefits them to be who they are, so they don't get help. And I mean,
yeah.
really, they are their own worst enemy, but they can't see that.
The funny thing is, like you said, everybody has a small trait of narcissism, because even if you say, "Oh, that's not me. I'm not like that. I'm better than that." Well, that might be
There you go.
bordering on. Yeah. Do you realize that that's what a narcissist says? One of those levels someplace in there. So, are you? No,
Yes.
I just told you I'm not. I'm better than that.
Yeah, I'm above that.
So, folks, there you go. Just like we all have a tendency to be voyeurs, we do like to listen in on and butt ourselves into other people's business sometimes, a little bit. And again, we all have that slight tendency of being a narcissist. And we're talking about that level where you're going beyond, beyond the little.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Honestly, some people can't
Yeah.
be helped, and those are things we have to accept sometimes. And if they can't be helped, then we have to
Hmm.
accept that that's who they are, and then you have to change the way you deal with that situation. Narcissism is one of those things.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you again. This has been fantastic. And seriously, I have um, learned a lot from you in this conversation, and realize, that we all have to be aware of this for ourselves to just protect ourselves.
Yeah, we
So
have
I
to.
got to say thank you very much for your.
Oh no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the platform. It's been fun talking. Well, mean, domestic violence isn't exactly fun, but to go through. But it's been it's been fun to be able to come on and talk about these things in a safe place and with a very lovely host like yourself. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.